All right, so keyboard shortcuts part 2. Today they are going to be browser-specific keyboard shortcuts, and we'll talk about what a browser is. Don't worry about that. And today's video is going to be a little more long-winded than usual because I want to go over some real-world examples and not just show you a bunch of keyboard shortcuts, but talk about some things to help you keep out of trouble. So let's get started. Okay, well, I guess the first thing I'll say is, what's a browser? You'd be amazed and maybe shocked at how often I hear that question. And I just kind of think to myself, wow, it's 2023 and we have some folks that just, God bless them, didn't learn even the basics of browsing 101. And browsing just means going to a website on the internet. But to answer the question, a browser is just a program that allows you to see a website on your screen. The more popular browsers are going to be, well, Microsoft Edge, comes with a computer, Google Chrome, and Mozilla's Firefox. Now, if you're using a Mac, your computer probably came with Apple Safari. But I'm going to talk primarily, well, not primarily, I'm going to talk only about Windows browsers, primarily because 85% of the market uses Windows computers. I'm not going to go over the 13% of you that use Mac. Furthermore, these keyboard shortcuts just don't work on a Mac. They have different commands. Okay, so back to browsers. The going joke is that Microsoft Edge and Apple Safari are the #1 browser for downloading a better browser. Let me show you what I mean. All right, so when you get a new Windows computer, whether you're using Windows 10 or Windows 11, it's going to come with this piece of garbage right here. This is the revamped version of Internet Explorer. They rebranded it to Microsoft Edge, but let's be honest, it's still terrible. Again, it is the #1 browser for downloading a better browser. What do I mean by that? You get your new computer, you'll fire up Microsoft Edge, and we go to the address line, and we're going to talk about the address line a lot. This is very important. It tells us where we are and where we're going. Now, right now, it's blank because we have this silly home screen, but first order of business for most computer users is to get a better browser. And in this case, we're going to go straight to chrome.com. Now, you could get, it would help if I typed that correctly, chrome.com, and I press enter. So I didn't Google search it, I just went directly to chrome.com. Now, you don't necessarily have to get Google Chrome. I know everyone has mixed feelings about Google in general, but I say pick which company you want to spy on you and just go with that because they all spy on you. I like Chrome. I think it's the more universal one. Google definitely takes good care of their browser, but you could just as well go with Firefox. You could go to firefox.com or go to brave.com. Brave is a very secure browser. Underneath the hood, it is just Google Chrome, but it has a lot more security features. I think it's a little overkill for the average person, but you also have the Opera browser. There's a bunch of different browsers out there, but the big three are going to be Microsoft Edge, Google Chrome, and Mozilla's Firefox. It's a nonprofit, but we're not going to get into that. Back to the browser. Okay, so I'm at chrome.com or google.com/Chrome. It redirected us. Anyway, I've already downloaded it, so I'm actually just going to close it, and you can see there's Google Chrome there. So we're going to be working with Chrome, but all the keyboard shortcuts that I'm going to show you today work with just about any browser. Okay, so with Google Chrome installed, your default homepage is just going to be Google. But the first keyboard shortcut I want to show you is Alt-D. Let me say that again, Alt, the Alt key, plus the letter D. And that's going to take us to the address line. And this is very important, and we'll get into that. All right, so on the computer's keyboard, I'm going to hold the Alt key down and press the letter D. Now, actually, I'm going to start by getting the focus. Right now, my cursor is already in the address line. We're going to take that out and just click, we'll just move our cursor down here to the Google search, and it gives us some suggestions. We're going to ignore that right now, but let's say I want to get to the address line. Yes, I can take the mouse and come all the way up here and click on it, but as we've talked about before, the mouse is slow, and that's why I'm showing you these keyboard shortcuts. So to get to the address line very quickly, we press Alt-D, and I want you to see what happens. You can see the cursor just jumps right up here to the address line so we can start typing. Now, this next part is important because unfortunately, again, here in 2023, we still have a lot of folks that just don't know the basics of browsing, and they actually have this impression that you're supposed to just Google everything. And I have to explain to them, this would be like if you take Amazon for an example. We know Amazon's website is www.amazon.com. Now we don't have to type all that out. We'll get to that in a moment, but we can just type amazon.com in the address line and press enter. And this is like dialing a phone number directly. Now it wouldn't make a lot of sense. Let's say I want to call Aunt Sally. And Aunt Sally's phone number hasn't changed in 40 years. It wouldn't make a lot of sense to go to the phone book and look up Aunt Sally's number. We have it memorized. We can just dial it directly. But unfortunately, this is what's happening when people go to Google and they Google absolutely everything. You want to get yourselves into trouble, folks? Google everything. Google everything and then just click on the first link. I see it all the time. If you know the address, and most of you do, take Amazon, for example, just go to the address line, type amazon.com. It takes you straight to Amazon. It's like dialing Aunt Sally's phone number. We know we're going to get Aunt Sally's phone ringing on the other end. You go to Google and type in Amazon and search for Amazon. You don't always know what those results are where they're going to take you. And I cannot tell you how many phone calls I get where they say, I got this scary pop-up and then I fell for this scam. And my question is, what was the last thing you clicked on before this scam pop-up came up? And the answer always is, I was just going to Amazon. I was just going to the bank. Well, what they're not telling me is that they were Google searching it. You don't need to Google. If you know your bank's website is chase.com, just go to the address line and type chase.com. You go Google searching it, the results you get may not take you to the thing you think you're going to. Same with Amazon. Another real world example, customer calls and says, I got this scam pop up on my screen. My question is, well, what was the last thing you clicked on? And they say, well, I was just looking for a recipe or a manual. I hear those two things all the time. Want to get yourselves into trouble? Go haphazardly searching for the manual for the new gadget that you just bought. Go haphazardly clicking on results for recipes without looking at the actual address. Now, as I tell my customers all the time, if it says BettyCrocker.com, we can pretty safely bet that BettyCrocker.com is probably not going to get us into any trouble. But most of the time when I ask them what was the actual address you clicked on, the answer is I don't know, because people don't look at the URL. And a URL is just a fancy, stupid jargon acronym for the website's address. It tells you where you're actually about to click, but not always. And this is why people get into trouble is, yeah, I did a Google search for Amazon, but the first result, if you're not careful, there's tiny little letters that says ad. Now, yes, Amazon does pay for ads to make sure they're always at the top of the list, but so do the scammers. So they'll pay really good money to make sure that when you Google search Amazon or Walmart or whatever it is that you're searching for, that the first results you click on might be a paid advertisement that could take you God knows where. And that's how folks get into trouble. So back to the address line, back to the browser, back to the keyboard shortcuts. Here we go. So again, I'm going to use Amazon as an example just because most people have heard of Amazon. It's an easy word to type. We're going to go AMAZON.com. But therein lies another keyboard shortcut. I don't even have to type the .com. I'm just going to go type Amazon. Now, if I just press enter right now, what's going to happen is I'm actually just going to do a Google search because I didn't type the .com. Your browser just assumes you want to search for the word Amazon. I don't want to search for the word Amazon. I want to go straight to Amazon.com. So we want to be sure to either type in .com at the end or next keyboard shortcut, Control and Enter. And what Control Enter does is it simply adds the .com to the end of the word I just typed. This is really handy for, well, the fact that most websites end in .com. So whether you're going to Amazon.com, Facebook.com, Google.com, you don't have to type www.whatever.com. You can just type in Google, press Control Enter, and it'll add the .com for you and go to that website. Very handy. So got Amazon typed into the address line here. Now I'm going to press Control and Enter. And keep in mind, your fingers will get really fast at this once you start practicing, but let's see what happens. Look at that. It added the .com and took us straight to Amazon.com. Let's try that again with another website. So I'm going to go Alt-D. We talked about that shortcut first because right now my cursor is not in the address line. I want to get it there, so I press Alt-D. And what you'll notice is that the entire URL, the address there, is highlighted. Now I have two choices here. I can press the delete key on the keyboard and just erase it. But as we learned in the last video, I can press Control-Z to undo that, and it puts it right back. You can just start typing. I don't have to press the delete key. I can just type in Walmart. We'll just do that one. Walmart, W-A-L-M-A-R-T, and press Control-Enter on the keyboard, and it adds the .com and takes us to walmart.com. Now, I'm not promoting any of these websites. I'm just using them as an example. Alt-D, back to the address line, and I can type in Facebook, F-A-C-E, and look at autocompletes for me. I'm not going to get into that right now. Actually, what I will do is I'll use the arrow keys, go to the right, because it's already there, but half of it's highlighted. So I want to get to the end of it. There we go. Now my cursor's at the end. I press Control-Enter. It adds the .com. It takes us straight to Facebook. Again, Google searching everything is just a good way to get into trouble. I think people have this impression that because it's Google, all of the search results are safe, and it's just absolutely not true. Again, the scammers pay good money to get their website to the top of the list, and Facebook, no company, is going to have the resources to check all their advertisers to make sure that they're on the up and up. So again, when it comes to manuals or recipes, and I ask all my customers, which demographic is looking for recipes and manuals? And I'm not trying to be offensive here. It's just a fact. It's primarily the older demographic that doesn't know as much about computers and web browsing that's looking for these things, and they do get into trouble looking for manuals. Even if they do successfully get to a website without getting a pop-up, another one of the pitfalls is, these fake websites will say, oh, you want the manual? You need to click here and do this and click there and go here. And my advice is, if you go to a website that says you have to jump through hoops to get the thing that you want to download or read, run like hell. Get out of there. No legitimate, reputable website is going to ask you to do those things. All right, back to the browser. Okay, so tabs. In a browser, you have, here we have the main window, but we also have tabs within the browser, so I can have multiple websites open at the same time. Now, I know for a lot of you this is remedial, but bear with me here. I'm going to open a new tab. Now, I have two choices. I can do the slow method with the mouse, click that plus button, and open a new tab that way. I think that's very slow. Or I can press Control-T on the keyboard. So I'm holding the Control key with my index finger, T with my little pinky here, and watch what happens. I have two tabs open right now. Facebook, a new blank tab, and I can do that plus button, or I can press Control-T, and voila, there's a third tab. And I can do that all day. There's a fourth tab, a fifth tab, Control-T, Control-T, Control-T. All right, so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tabs open. That's probably overkill. If you have that many tabs open, you probably need to close those. Now, in the last video, I went over Alt F4. Do you remember that keyboard shortcut? It closes the entire window, but we're focused on a browser today. And within a browser, we have little windows within the main window. We don't call them little windows, we call them tabs. I just showed you that. Now let's say I want to close those tabs. Again, Alt F4 is like clicking the X up here. I don't want to close the entire window. I just want to close the tab that I'm on. Right now I'm in this tab. I'm going to press Control F4, not Alt F4, but Control F4, and watch what happens. There's one fewer tab. Let's back up a little bit. I have 7 tabs now. Let's do Control F4, Control F4, Control F4. You can see them closing. And I'm on the second tab now. And when I close this second tab, it should bring me back to the first tab. And it does. The first tab was Facebook. We're back where we left off. So Control-T to open a new tab. Control F4 to close that tab. Now just be sure you have that tab selected. If I click Control F4, now I only have one tab. If I press Control F4 and close the only tab I have open, what do you think is going to happen? You guessed it. It closes the entire window, which can be useful. I mean, you might want to close everything and just go Control F4, just close all the tabs, close the whole browser, and start over. Back to the browser. Now, just a side note here, this might be useful to you. I'm going to create a custom shortcut just to Google Chrome. Okay, this is kind of a nerdy thing, but you might find it useful. I'm going to right-click on the icon here, and I get a menu. Now, in Windows 11, it might look a little bit different, but we're going to go down to Properties, the very bottom there. And right here it says shortcut key. Now, I'm going to put my mouse cursor there. I can cycle using the tab key. I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to use the mouse just for simplicity. And the shortcut key, let's say I want Google Chrome to open when I press Control Alt C, C for Chrome. All right, so I'm going to press Control Alt, and you can see it shows that I'm holding those keys down. C. Now I'm letting go of all three of those keys. And so now the shortcut key for Google Chrome is Control Alt C. So I'm going to click Apply and Continue and click OK. So now when I press, I'm going to back up here. I'm going to press and hold Control Alt and C on the keyboard, and Chrome pops up. Is that cool or what? Now, I used to use keyboard shortcuts like this for everything I did. I could do Control Alt C to open Chrome. I could do, or I could do Control Alt C and assign that to the calculator. You know, C for calculator. You have to kind of be creative with your letters because there's only so many letters. But one of my favorite commands is I have a very nerdy shortcut that I made to shut down my computer. I'm not going to get into that today, but when I press Control Alt S to shut down my computer, shuts it down. And what that does is it saves me from coming all the way down here to the start menu, clicking on the power button, and then clicking shut down. That's 1, 2, 3 clicks, not the end of the world. But instead of doing 3 clicks, I can just go Control Alt S with like this keyboard shortcut that I'm my hands are very used to, and boom, computer just shuts down. Moving on. Okay. So we're back to Google Chrome here. We've got Google open. We went over Alt D, that takes us to the address line. We went over Control T to open a new tab. Control F4, close that tab. So the next thing I want to show you is zooming. And this is really handy because people ask all the time, Michael, the print is too small or it's too big and I want to change it. Now this works for any website, and the best part is your browser will remember the setting you chose for that website. So let's say Amazon.com is just famously too small for you to read. If you zoom in to, let's say, 150%, where all the text is really big and easy to read, the next time you go back to Amazon, it'll remember you want that 150% zoom. Other than that, that zoom is not going to affect the other websites. So it's not like we're zooming in on every single website. It is website specific. With zooming, you have 2 choices. You can come up here and look in your browser settings and hunt for the zoom in, zoom out button. I think that's slow. I don't want to click on 3 dots and then click on this stuff again. Mouse is too slow. Plus the keyboard shortcut is extremely handy to have. So let's go find a website real quick and zoom in and out. Okay, so here I went to the address line, I typed in msn.com and I pressed enter, and here we have MSN. Now I personally don't read this. Again, I'm not supporting any of these websites. I'm just using it as an example. Now let's say I'm scrolling here and I think this text is just too small. I want to make it bigger. Yes, I can come up here and click on the 3 dots and zoom in and out. Or I can use the keyboard shortcut. Super easy, super awesome. We're going to press Control. We have the plus and the minus key here. Now normally you have to hold the Shift key down to use the plus, but we don't have to do that with the zoom feature. Just press Control and plus, and we're going to zoom in and see what happens. So Control plus, Control plus, Control plus, Control plus, Control plus. Oh my goodness, everything is extremely, way too big. So what happened? We zoomed in too far. That's what happened. Let's say I want to reset that and just get it back to 100% normal where I started. Ready? Well, we just did Control plus to zoom in. Control minus, you guessed it, zooms out. But I want to do reset. So I do Control, next key is 0. Watch what happens. Control 0, and it's right back to normal. I can also zoom out from here. Control minus, 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 minus. And of course, this is just way too small to read. All right, so to wrap up, I'm going to show you one last command. I showed you before in the previous video how to cycle between windows using the Alt-Tab. Yes, Alt-Tab key. And if you'll recall, you hold Alt and Tab and you can cycle between different windows without having to use the stupid mouse. It's not that much different with tabs within your browser. Not to be confused with the Tab key. We're talking about the tabs in your browser. So if I want to cycle between those tabs within the browser's window, we use the Control Tab key. You ready? Okay, so here I opened up a bunch of different tabs. I've got MSN, Yahoo, Google News, Facebook, and Amazon. Now, right now I'm on the last tab. So if I press Control Tab, it's going to cycle back to the first one, just like it did with the windows we went over in the last video. So let's try it out. I'm going to hold Control and press the Tab key, and voila. Now we're back to our first tab. I want to go to the second one. There we go. Tab. I'm holding the Control key down. Tab, Tab. And we can do the reverse by pressing Control Shift Tab. So if I want to go backwards, I want to go to the previous tab. I'm on the last one now. Control Shift Tab brings us to the previous one. Control Shift Tab again. Letting go of the Shift key, we're going back forward again. Control Tab to the next one. Control Tab again. Anyway, that's it. And now on to my funny story. I hope you like it. All right, so my funny story comes from the late 90s, when computers as we know them now really came out. And they really set the standard for how we use computers today. In fact, if I took you back in time to maybe 1996 and I showed you a Windows 95 computer, you'd be shocked at how similar it looks to computers that we use today. The taskbar, the start menu, the basics of how we use a computer really haven't changed in about 26, 27 years. But on to the tech support. So back in those days, internet really wasn't a thing. If you called tech support, they really couldn't connect to your computer like they can now to see your screen. And so they were really helping the customer blind. And back in those days, it wasn't just Windows. I mean, there were still leftover computers from the previous generations of computers which used DOS. And if you missed DOS, God bless you, those were exciting times. You had a black screen, white letters, and I'm not going to get into too much detail about that. On to the tech support story. So I actually saw this video on YouTube from a person who used to do tech support back in the 90s. And it was really interesting because, again, they couldn't see the customer's screen. So they had to just kind of go by feel or by sound. And what I mean by that is, let's say the tech support agent said, all right, ma'am, sir, I need you to type a command in DOS. I need you to type in cd space Windows. Change directory to Windows. So in other words, we're moving to the Windows folder so we can do the next step. And the customer would come back and say, oh, it says invalid command. Well, if the customer typed what the tech support agent was saying, cd space Windows, we shouldn't have an error if they typed it correctly. But what the tech support people were figuring out was that they would have to listen to the number of keystrokes. So cd space WIND, 10 characters to change directory to the Windows folder. You don't need to follow everything that I'm saying here, just hear me out. And again, the customer would say, invalid command. Tech support agent finally started listening to the number of keystrokes, because back in those days, the keyboards were pretty clunky and kind of loud, and you could hear every keystroke the customer was typing. And come to find out, the customer was not using the space bar to, do the space portion of the command. They were actually typing out the word space. And they figured this out because they're like, wait a minute, this is way more than the number of keystrokes that you should be typing. And it's because the customer was typing cd, space, whatever directory they were trying to go to. It's just a funny story that, I never would have thought of, but I actually have had to use that technique in my own line of work because I can't always connect to my customer's computer. But I kind of listen and I go, wait a minute. Anyway, so a lot has changed since then. Nowadays, remote tech support usually means I can see the customer's screen. Your tech support agent can see your screen and help you. Now, on that note, if I haven't mentioned it before, be very, 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 very careful about who you let take remote control of your computer. I don't care if you called them or if they called you. Don't let a stranger take remote control of your computer. And on that note, another side story, I had a customer here recently. He said, now, Michael, you're telling me don't let a total stranger take remote control of your computer. He said, but here it is, you want to take remote control of my computer. And I said, you know what? I applaud you for taking the time to realize you're right. You don't know me. I just came into your home, you met me for the first time, and I said, you're not going to hurt my feelings at all if you don't want this program on your computer so that you can share your screen with me the next time you need help over the phone. Just keep in mind, I will have to drive all the way out to your house to help you, because trying to help you blind, as we learned, is very difficult and frustrating for both parties. But by the second house call, he finally said, you know what? I like you. I know you now. I trust you. He said, go ahead and put that program on my computer. But in the meantime, the fact that he even took the time to just say, Michael, I don't know you. I don't think I want you taking remote control of my computer. I went, you know what? Gold star and a trophy for you today, because most people don't take the time to even think that way. They just go, well, I like this guy. What the heck? So if you don't want to do remote tech support, you're not going to hurt my feelings. I'll give you a gold star and a trophy. But anyway, there's my story from the 90s. I could go on and on with stories like that all day. I just thought it was really funny that, and the truth is, I can tell you from my experience, I've actually had customers who said, where's the space bar? I know that where's the space bar? It's like, wow, it's 2023 now, but at any year, at any point in the last 20 years, when somebody says, where's the space bar? You just kind of, so if I ever seem like I'm frustrated or I'm impatient, I assure you I'm not impatient. There are some things that you just don't get used to, like where's the space bar, or where's the power button, or what we learned earlier, what's a browser? Anyway, that's my story. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.